The protagonist ate a fruit that could grant a super profession, but he only changed his class to a fruit farmer. He begged the saint to give him another fruit. However, the saint refused. It turned out that everyone who had eaten a second skill fruit had been fatally poisoned. Helpless, the protagonist could only go home and become a fruit farmer. Although, with the blessing of the skill, living a happy life would not be difficult. However, the protagonist had set his heart on becoming an adventurer since childhood and would not give up so easily. Every day after finishing his orchard work, he would practice chopping on a tree stump. However, he could never cut through the stump. He believed it was the sword's problem and deliberately cultivated an expensive skill fruit, planning to sell it to buy a better sword. Unexpectedly, an accident happened because the girl he raised, Ella, did not know that skill fruits were actually poisonous to him, and she put one into the food while cooking. The protagonist suddenly felt his body heat up and collapse to the ground. It turned out that nothing bad had happened, and he did not even realize he had awakened the sword saint profession. At that moment, Ella, who had also eaten a skill fruit, awakened the skill appraisal ability. She discovered that the protagonist was immune to all fruit toxins and had also awakened the sword god profession. Hearing Ella's words, the protagonist immediately went to the tree stump and swung his sword with all his strength. The stump was instantly split in two, and even a towering tree behind it was cut down. The protagonist never expected that by accident, he had become the only person in the world with two skills. The next day, the protagonist eagerly went to the Adventurers Guild to take on a quest but was provoked by a man. The man drew a greatsword, intending to teach him a lesson, but the protagonist blocked it with ease. Realizing the protagonist was not to be messed with, the man left with his subordinates in embarrassment. The protagonist then took Ella to the quest location. From Ella's words, he learned that slimes were defensive monsters that were very difficult for novice adventurers to kill. The protagonist planned to sneak around for a surprise attack, but was discovered by a slime. He thought that with the sword god profession, facing a slime head-on would be no problem, but to his surprise, one strike cut the slime clean in half. He realized he had underestimated the sword saint profession. While cleaning up the battlefield, the protagonist and Ella suddenly heard a roar. In the distance appeared a giant ogre. Used as bait by three men, the protagonist dodged the ogre's attack and killed it with a single strike.